Be Hero presents Sheroes.
Hi everyone, Alicia here,
And Amy.
and we are asking the so-called heroes to step aside for a moment so that we can give the Sheroes their turn in the spotlight.
Yes, you heard right. Welcome to Sheroes, a podcast by Be Hero Media.
So just sit back and relax because it's time for the real game changers to show you how it's done. Alright, so in honor of May the 4th be with you and Revenge of the 5th, the popular Star Wars fandom created holiday of sorts, as well as
This is the May. We wanted to talk about one of our favorites, Sheroes from Star Wars. From the prequel trilogy, you would know her as Queen Amidala or Padme.
I can't recall if it says in the movie how old she was when she started her term or reign, but we know that she was 14. How would it be to have an entire world trust you at 14 to know how to take care of them and to lead them?
Now, you and I, Alicia, we've both done our fair share of learning about monarchs, and I've found that young rulers have rarely been good for a kingdom, and in many cases have been very bad. So it's awesome to review Amidala, who was young, but also a very good ruler for her people. Because of this, we wanted to take the time to review her leadership qualities that we found as we've reviewed the prequel trilogy.
One of the first things that I noticed as I was watching episode 1 is that she leaves Naboo very reluctantly to plead her cause before the Senate. The minute she finished what she came for, she reaffirmed her need to be with her people. And again, having studied history, one of the things I've noticed about great leaders is they are there with their people and they're very conscious of making sure their people know that they're there for them.
In episode 1, when R2-D2 saved their ship from destruction, Sabe, Padme's decoy, publicly said to commend the droid and asked Padme to clean it, which of course she did.
One reason I like this scene is because it makes me think they had a great relationship built on earned trust. You could say that Padme was like a manager and Sabe was an employee. I think it's fantastic that she trusted that she could give instruction to her leader and it would be acted on.
Later, she goes to the Gungans and asks them for help, knowing that they don't like her people, but she goes ahead and begs and entrusts her life and the lives of her people in them because she needed help.
In episode 2, we find out that her people had such great trust in her that they tried to re-elect her after her term had completed.
I think it's also worth noting that she had multiple assassination attempts that she was able to thwart, both through planning and trusting others, as she did not allow fear for her life to stop her from moving forward and doing her job.
One scene that fascinates me is her battle plan. She has the Gungans create a diversion so that Padme herself and others can get into the palace. They free the spaceships for the pilots to take so they can take out the Federation ship. Sabe creates another diversion, and she gets into the throne room with a small. Padme gets into the throne room with a small band of warriors and discusses a new treaty. I don't know anything about battle plans, but it seems well thought out, and it was effective in this instance.
Okay, so now we want to change directions for a couple minutes and address a common discussion point about whether she should have been with Obi-Wan or Anakin. Up until this last round of watching the movies, I would have 100% said she definitely should have gone for Obi-Wan. But watching episode 2 this time around, it's clear to me that Padme is more of a rule breaker and Obi-Wan is definitely a rule follower. I also think it's important to note that Padme really had no relationship with Obi-Wan other than her connection to Anakin and his being her protector for a short time.
So where does this idea come from that she should have been with Obi-Wan? It all stems from that one scene in episode 2 when they are in the arena. Anakin and Padme are on this creature, and Obi-Wan jumps up onto it to escape with them. If you watch closely, you will see her put her hand on his thigh. I can't say why that happened. Possibly he needed help balancing. But one brief moment really isn't enough for the Ken Amidala ship to float on. Sorry. If you do have more to float this ship on than we are missing, feel free to reach out. We would love to have you talk about it on our show. One thing I like about Padme is how even though almost everyone is trying to manipulate her, particularly Senator or Chancellor Palpatine, but she does get this from the Jedi as well. And while it sometimes works, she is really good at dancing her way out of manipulations, to the point where Palpatine needs her dead in order to make his empire happen. In the first movie, he did manage to manipulate her into getting himself made Chancellor, but she then managed to defeat the Trade Federation without the Republic's help, and ultimately very little help from the Jedi, because the Sith and the Jedi ended up neutralizing each other.
In Episode 2, when Amidala was off-world, Palpatine tricked Jar Jar to moving to give Palpatine emergency powers. They did this by implying that Padme would have done it. I would argue there's no way she would have, else why send bounty hunters to assassinate her? Now, I wouldn't call this manipulation, but in watching Episode 2, I get the impression that the Jedi don't really have a representative in the Republic, and they kind of look at Padme, who, it could be argued, they helped raise as their connection to the Republic. I might even argue that they need her.
We see her have frequent discussions with the Jedi, where they try to get her to put their point before the Senate.
I also wanted to note the contrast between Amidala and Anakin. Anakin has incredible power in the Force, but in a lot of ways, he was just another Jedi, where Amidala is seemingly not powerful, but because of her devotion to her people, and all people everywhere, she really stands out and shines above her colleagues and the people who know her.
Where Anakin is always fearing for the future, you have one instance in Episode 2 where you see her focusing on one task at a time. First, when she, Anakin, and Obi-Wan are taken to the arena to be killed for show, you see her pull something from her hair, and as soon as she is chained up, she starts picking the lock. All the while, they are releasing monsters to destroy her. Then she climbs the pillar and focuses on not letting the monster get to her. Later in the episode, in Episode 3, when she finds out what Anakin did, she goes to confront him. She doesn't shy away from the truth.
Anakin slaughtered all of his people, where she did everything in her power to protect and save her people.
All power she seeks is for the benefit of others. The power he seeks is motivated by many things, but lean more towards his own benefit. In conclusion, we believe that Padme should be recognized as the shero that she is because her successful efforts to save her people and planet from the Federation, and her efforts to save the Republic from tyranny.
In closing, we'd like to leave you with some sources that you can look into to get more Padme in your life. For this episode, we focused on the prequel series. You can also find her in
The Clone Wars, Star Wars Forces of Destiny,
Queen's Shadow by E.K. Johnston. Quick note I wanted to mention here, we didn't include this in the original part of our podcast, but I wanted to mention, although we didn't read this book, it looks like in there it actually mentions that she went back to Tatooine and freed many of the slaves. However, she failed to save
Shmi Skywalker.
There's also Queen's Peril, which may or may not be out yet. It was due to come out last year, but due to COVID, I assume that's why it was delayed in coming out.
You also have Star Wars Episode 1 Journal, Amidala.
And she appeared in several video games and comics.
She's also likely in other books and media that we haven't covered or that we don't currently know about.
Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, remember to like, share, and subscribe to celebrate more sheroes. And remember,
be brave.